Okay, so some more live visuals which are coming in from the event which is going to start with Shireen Ban and the top 3 IT companies. We've seen visuals of all of the top brass of Wipro, Infosys, as well as TCS. So we'll keep getting you more and more visuals of that. That's that big CNBC TV18 exclusive that you can track in just a couple of minutes. Okay, but let's get back to the markets now. It's status quo right now for the Nifty, so just about higher by around 100 odd points. For the mid-cap index, it's down around 30 odd points. A couple of stocks such as Indocin, remember there was that Moody's revision which came through. That stock is still under pressure, so down around 1.3% for that particular one. But Mr. Tulsian, you know, I wanted to come in on Wockhardt and the deal that they announced today. We spoke about Wockhardt yesterday. What do you think about that transaction which they've announced of selling 62 brands to Dr. Reddy's?
See, Ekta, yesterday also I've said that they are monetizing their assets to pay their debts, and actually one cannot take this as a prudent move, because then what will be the residual business left with the company and whether the things will really be improving or not, because similar aggression in monetization was seen about 4 or 5 years back as well. But that has not, resulted in the turnaround. So even, taking that into consideration, probably one should not get too excited that the debts will get paid off and the company will soon be coming back on the track, unless until you see the comforts coming in from the US FDA front. So till then, probably one can remain cautious on the stock after seeing such a big run up also, which is to the extent about 50-60% in this last 6 months or so.
Okay, fair point. Just looking at the ABB numbers, there's also one of exceptional loss that the company has delivered. Mr. Tulsian, any thoughts on ABB's numbers? There's a one-time loss, but other than that, what's your thoughts on the numbers, and do you have a call on the stock?
Anuj, you are right. In fact, if you see the exceptional solar inverter business which they've sold, the company made a loss of 70 crore. Then the power grid business have been hived off, and that portion is yet to get listed. I'm expecting that listing to happen maybe in the next 2 to 3 months. And if you see, the electrification has really shown a very good performance, even on a QOQ basis and even on a YOY basis. And come on the industrial automation, in fact, there has been a big disappointment. So if you really take the overall scenario for the company, probably a lot of exceptions are seen, and one should not really take a call on the Q4 numbers alone. This is a Q4 numbers for the company. They have December as the year end. And if you take the overall profit before tax and these exceptionals, I think that has shown a good growth of about 450 crore profit before tax, with a top line of closure to about 7,000 crore. And I am not disappointed with the order inflow also, with the companies seem to be having, and one should allow the new avatar to get emerged into. As I said, solar inverter business has been sold off, power grid business has been hived off. So probably that will be seen quite positive for the company. So one should, if you see Q4 numbers in isolation and compare it with on a QOQ basis or YOY basis, probably you will get disappointment because of these exceptionals which I said of the solar inverter business loss of 70 crore and power grid business having hived off.
So you'd buy into this weakness, Mr. Tulsian?
Yes, Anuj. In fact, I will be buyer in both ABB and Siemens, because if you see the sequential growth of the company as well, probably that has also indicated, though the last quarter of these capital goods companies always book the major portion of their orders and this thing, but after having corrected, I think both qualify as a buy now at the current level, ABB as well as Siemens.
Okay, well, Amrish, what are your thoughts on a lot of these hospital stocks which are doing well? Apollo comes out with numbers tomorrow. Aster DM, if you saw that one, right, that too is at a fresh high. What's your sense?
No, in fact, I've been a buyer in the hospital stocks, and Apollo is something which I've been recommending for quite a while. And in fact, looking at that growth which has happened, especially in the last 7-8 quarters, and clearly going ahead, there may not be too much of capex, like what the management has said. And there would be some more like monetization they've already done partially. So clearly, I think there would be a sweating of the capex which they've done in the last 3 to 4 years. So clearly, looking at the performance which has happened in the past, I think even going ahead, a couple of quarters should extremely be good. So even at these levels, I don't see much of a downside. In case for whatever reason, you see a correction, it's a buying opportunity.
Okay, it's a buying opportunity. Apollo Hospitals, of course, comes out with numbers. So Well, this move on Mahanagar Gas is still quite interesting, 4.5% higher. Godrej Consumer is up about 3.5%. So that's another stock. Interglobe Aviation, that's another stock where you're seeing some bit of buying. So a lot of these stocks right now doing quite well. Mr. Tulsian, before we thank you, any thoughts on Godrej Consumer? We have been only talking about Hindustan Unilever, but Godrej also making a bit of a decent move right now.
See, Anuj, it reminds me of a couple of months back, if you recall, that when Unilever sounded little cautious on the Indian operation, saying that the volume degrowth or volume growth will not be seen comfortable at that time, and post that in this last 2 months, Unilever has risen. I don't have the data, but I think it has risen by about 17-18%. And I actually, for those 15 days, the Unilever counter really remained quite weak, maybe sub 2000 or closer to about 1900. Similar case is happening with Godrej Consumer. The stock was ruling at around 750 about in this last 1 month or maybe about a month back. Post that, we have seen the good Q3 numbers. We have seen this better volume growth, naturally at the cost of the compromising on the margin. But going forward, if you see their Indonesian business and their insecticide business, they are the leader. African business and the soap business probably may show a little dilly-dallying. But having seen this counter, the stock having corrected by 115, 120 is really qualifying a very good buy. And in fact, we see this kind of swift moves happening in case of all these FMCG stocks. It reminds me of about Dabur 6-7 months back when it fell to 350 and moved to 520 now, giving a gain of about 50% in this last 6-7 months. So similar is the case happening here also. If I take a call on the Godrej Consumer estimates, probably the EPS for FY21 on a conservative basis can be taken at 18 rupees, and that gives you this stock available at a P multiple of 35, which is seen to be extremely cheap. So yes, amongst the FMCG space, probably this is seen to be the cheapest. I'm not comparing it with ITC, which is again has its own problem of the lower discounting, which is now rolling at 15-16 P multiple. But amongst the credible FMCG players, the Godrej Consumer is seen to be ruling at a very low P of 35. And I won't be surprised to see the stock giving a gain of about 12-15% in next 3 months or so.
Okay, Mr. Tulsian, we thank you on that note. Thanks a lot for joining us. So that's the FMCG pick that Mr. Tulsian has of the lot, the Godrej Consumer, as the cheapest, and that stock right now up about 3.5%. Jay Bala is now joining us from catchthechaos.com. Jay, hi, good afternoon. Thanks a lot for joining us. So what's the call on the index? It's been, such extreme moves on the budget day. We were breaking down and then we had this sharp reversal. Your thoughts on what's the range now and what are the targets?
Yeah, good evening, Anuj. See, we spoke about the markets on closing bell on the 15th of January. I had said that market is facing some time resistance, and I had also pointed out how the US markets were stretched. And in the context of US markets potential to fall, the Nifty would underperform. So that's exactly what happened. And the market turned from 12,430, and whereas the S&P fell just 3.75%, the Nifty fell from 12,400 to 11,600. So, but what the market did post that was a bit of a surprise. I didn't expect the market to cross 12,000. So once it crossed that, and it's now looking like a very compressed correction, and the markets, the bulls have a slight edge over the back. There are actually two scenarios present, Anuj. One is a bearish picture, another one is a bullish picture. But given the fact that the US S&P is looking like it's heading for 3,500, I would give the bullish scenario a slight edge over the bearish scenario. So I think unless some heavyweights like SBI or something from the private banks breaks down, I think the bulls have a slight edge over the bears. So although it's not a big edge, but it's a tangible one, but they still have to contend with the problem that the banking index is still clocking lower lows and lower highs. And 31,600, 700 on the banking index is going to be very crucial. And particularly the private bank, HDFC Bank should stay above 1,200 and 1180, and it looks like ICICI is going to clock fresh highs. So as long as some biggies don't break down, I think the bulls have a slight edge.
Okay, so bulls have a slight edge. Jay, I'm going to take that point forward with regards to bulls and talk about the top gainer on the Nifty, HUL. What are you spotting technically for that one?
See, I had said this on my last interaction on closing bell on 15th of January that FMCG, that's the headline, in fact, CNBC has put FMCG is rightly poised for making new highs. And it's not a surprise that HLL has come where it is. But it's the trend is getting quite mature out here. Probably it can push to somewhere close to 2,300, 2,400, maybe even 2,500. But be very careful. This is not a stage for you to, incrementally invest money into HUL. There are other, FMCG stocks like Dabur, which is looking still structurally having more upside. You can buy that on a pullback, but not HUL. HUL, as I said earlier, it's got a little more upside left, but the risks are getting very skewed. And if you want to look at other players within the FMCG space, now you can look at something else. Definitely not Marico. Marico is looking quite weak, and once again, Godrej Consumer just spoke a few minutes ago. It's a very short-term move. Avoid those two. Marico and Godrej Consumer need to be avoided, but others are looking quite strong.
Okay, Jay, you have a short call on Bata. Am I reading right?
That's correct,
Anuj. It's a bit of a brave call, I must say. But yeah, please go ahead.
You have to pull the trigger, and unless you have skin in the game, you have to take a bit of losses. And that's how you.
No, I can understand being a contra call, but just trying to understand the logic behind this trade. Yes.
Yeah, as an Elliott-ian, you always tend to be a little bit contrarian to the market. I look at the markets from a slightly longer time frame and the shorter time frame. So from a weekly charts and from a 2 to 3 year time frame, I think Bata is completing a major five just below the 1900 mark. So and we have got if you look at the charts, it's got a pronounced negative divergence too. So and it's from the record high it clocked 3-4 sessions ago, it's clocked a bearish outside day. So that's telling that there is some pressure there. So this can fail, but you must have hard stops at 1900. But that's a very small price to pay, because this has potential to drop to 1650 in the short term, maybe even 1100 if this is a major top. So that's the kind of risk you always take. Hugely disproportionate to the amount of potential if it pans out the way you want it. So that's why we are quite brave when we take contra calls, because often when you go wrong it's a small loss, but when you go right it's going to be a big profit. So that's the logic behind the trade.
Okay, all right, Jay, what is the logic behind going long on Pfizer as well as Sanofi?
Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer. The pharma stocks are looking outstandingly good, and the best out there is actually Ajanta Pharma and Shilpa Medicals. But unfortunately, they've just exploded out there. So within the sector, I'm anticipating Nifty Pharma to touch somewhere close to 9,000, maybe even beyond that. So I've drilled down to a short-term move, which is just about to take place for Pfizer and Sanofi. So these haven't moved much, and the technical setup is very optimistic there. So I'm placing a stop below 6,600 for Sanofi and expecting it to touch 7,500 to 7,800. And Pfizer, so very similar structure to Sanofi. It's looking like it's going to cross 5,000, go somewhere between 5,000 to 5,500. So I have an average price of about 5,200. And place a stop below 4,000. I think it's going to be quite a easy trade.
Okay, that's on Pfizer and Sanofi. But just a couple of more names that I want to discuss with you. But if you've tracked Interglobe Aviation and Escorts.
Yeah, Escorts is a fantastic chart structure, Anuj, and it's looking very attractive at current levels. But you just need to pay a little bit of patience out there. You want to wait for a pullback somewhere close to 800, maybe even 780. I don't think the market will go that deep, but if it does come to 700, 800 on Escorts, you just need to grab that with both your hands. It's looking at the medium-term structure is just outstanding. It might even go to all-time highs. So that it's got huge upside potential. And Interglobe is a play on crude. I think that trade might have been done because I think crude is stabilizing at current levels, and from the high of about 1900s, Interglobe doesn't look that great. You can obviously see lower lows and lower highs there. If it should have gone up, it should have gone up already. So I'm a bit skeptical out there. And I said last time too, 1650 is a crucial level for it. That's going to offer resistance to Interglobe. As long as it stays below 1650, the bias is slightly negative. But if it does take out 1650, I think one last record high is possible for Interglobe.
Okay, all right. And Jay, we're going to leave it on that note. Thanks very much for joining in and giving us all of those updates with regards to the technicals. Just an update from the NASSCOM or the big CNBC-TV18 exclusive, wherein Chandra is in fact giving the keynote session at the NASSCOM Technology and Leadership Forum. So we'll keep getting you updates from the event. You can see the visuals also at this point in time. But moving on, CNBC-TV18 and National Stock Exchange have come together to promote investor awareness through a special campaign that empowers you to make the right decisions with your money. So as a part of this special segment today, Anuj, tell us what are the benefits of long-term investing?
Yeah, you know what, this is a topic which is very close to my heart, even though, we talk more about the day-to-day movements in the market. But I think when I was doing this Unplugged series, this is what both Madhukela and, there's one more person, I'm now forgetting the name, but I was getting to know that it's the power of compounding and staying invested. Sunil Sanghania as well, about the point that there are so many times when you book out after 50 to 100% gains on a stock. I'll just give you an example. For example, DMart, which came out with IPO 300, then went to 600, then 1200, and after that there was some concern about promoter selling stake, had a correction to 1000. So sometimes you think that okay, it's corrected about 10%. Issue with booking out in winners is that re-entry is tough, because you always keep wondering that okay, I had sold at this price. Now for example, I sold at 1200, now it's moved to 1400. Do I re-enter? That's always going to be a tough part. So chances are that if you get into a winning investment, that will keep compounding. Of course, you'll have to keep revisiting your investment thesis, and there's so many times when you invest in long term and you end up holding duds. That also happens, but that's the call that you need to take. Also, what happens is this investing in long term helps you avoid this intermediate distractions, 1 or 2 quarter issues. Kotak Mahindra Bank, for example, when it went through that issue about promoter stake sale, it had that sharp correction. But if you see a 10-year chart, I mean, you won't even notice that. So that's the benefit. Also, dividend income. I mean, ask Ramdev Agarwal how much money he's made, for example, from Hero MotoCorp dividends. So that's also another issue for good companies. You keep getting dividend over and over. So that's also another long-term investing advantage.
Okay, so definitely benefits in terms of staying put and holding on to your investments coming in there. But we need to take a break now. We'll come back and get you our buy today, sell tomorrow call.